The morning sun peeked through the tall glass windows of the Rosenberg Grand Hotel, lighting up the marble floors like gold. It was another busy day. Guests rushed to meetings, luggage carts rolled down the hallways, and the smell of fresh coffee floated from the lobby cafe. In the middle of all this quiet chaos walked Aisha, dressed in her crisp black and white uniform, her hair neatly tied back. She carried a small cart full of cleaning supplies, her badge shining under the lights. For most people, she was invisible, just another hotel maid going about her work. But for Aisha, this job meant everything. She had been working at the Rosenberg for almost 3 years. It wasn't her dream job, but it was honest work, and it paid enough to help her younger brother back home in Suriname. He was still in school, and every month she sent part of her earnings to make sure he had books and food. Aisha had left her home country with big hopes. She had once dreamed of becoming a translator. She loved languages, the way words could connect people who didn't even know each other. She had studied Dutch and English in school, even started a degree in linguistics. But when her mother fell ill and the bills started piling up, she had to drop out and find work. A friend told her about cleaning jobs in Amsterdam, and she took the chance. The Rosenberg Grand was one of the fanciest hotels in the city, the kind of place where rich travelers and business people stayed. Aisha liked the order of it. The smell of clean sheets, the sparkle of polished mirrors, the quiet satisfaction of making a room perfect. But sometimes she couldn't help feeling small in a place full of luxury she could never afford. That morning she checked her list. 10 rooms to clean, all before noon. The last one on the list was the penthouse suite, the biggest room in the hotel. It was reserved for a special guest, someone very important. The supervisor had said it was for a magnate, a word Aisha had only heard in movies. Apparently, he was one of the richest businessmen in Europe, known for buying entire companies like most people buy groceries. His name was Mr. Victor van Dalen. Aisha didn't think much about it. For her, every room was the same. Clean it, make it shine, and move on. Still, she felt a little nervous. Important guests often noticed every small thing. A wrinkle on the bed, a misplaced towel, a speck of dust on the lamp. She wanted everything to be perfect. When she reached the penthouse, the door was slightly open. The guest wasn't there yet, but his luggage was. Sleek black suitcases with gold initials neatly lined up near the bed. Aisha quietly started her work. She dusted the furniture, changed the sheets, and checked the minibar. She moved quickly, humming a soft tune under her breath. Halfway through polishing the glass table, the phone on the side desk rang. She hesitated for a second. Normally, only reception or the guest would answer it. But she didn't want the noise to bother anyone nearby, so she picked it up. "Good morning?" "Rosenberg Grand Hotel," she said softly. A man's voice spoke rapidly on the other end, in Dutch. Without thinking, Aisha replied smoothly, her words flowing naturally, almost musical in tone. She explained that the guest hadn't arrived yet and offered to take a message. The caller thanked her politely and hung up. She smiled a little. It felt nice to use her Dutch like that. Most of the time, she only spoke it with other staff members. Just as she placed the phone back on the receiver, she heard the soft click of the door opening behind her. She turned, startled. A tall man in a dark gray suit stepped in. He carried himself with quiet authority, the kind of presence that made people stop talking when he entered a room. His silver hair was neatly combed, his expression calm but sharp. He looked around the room and then at her. "Good morning," he said in English. Aisha quickly straightened up. "Good morning, sir. I was just finishing up." He nodded and placed his briefcase on the table. "You answered the phone?" She froze for a moment, unsure if she had done something wrong. "Yes, sir. I didn't want it to keep ringing." He smiled faintly. "You spoke Dutch?" "Yes," she replied, nervous but polite. It was someone from the front desk. They spoke Dutch, so I replied the same. His eyes lingered on her, not in a rude way, but with a kind of curiosity. "You speak it very well," he said. "Better than many people I know here." "Thank you, sir," she said softly. He didn't say anything else, just nodded again and went to check something on his laptop. Aisha finished the last bit of cleaning quietly, but her heart was racing. She kept replaying the moment in her mind. Did she make a mistake? Did he think she was out of line for answering the phone? Or maybe he was just surprised a maid spoke Dutch so fluently. When she finally left the room, she took a deep breath in the hallway. She had worked in the hotel long enough to know that small moments could mean a lot, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But something about the way Mr. Van Dalen had looked at her made her feel seen, not as a maid, but as a person. Later in the staff break room, her friend asked why she looked so distracted. Aisha just smiled and said, "Nothing. Just a strange morning." But deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that this small, ordinary moment, answering a phone in Dutch, might not be so ordinary after all. That night, as she lay in her small apartment, she replayed the day in her mind. She thought about her brother, her dreams, and the powerful man who had looked surprised. Not because of what she was doing, but because of who she was. A maid who spoke Dutch like a local. A woman with more inside her than anyone ever noticed. She didn't know it yet, but this single moment, a phone call, a few words in another language, was about to open a door she never even knew existed. The next morning started just like any other day. Aisha arrived at the hotel before sunrise, as she always did. She liked coming early. The lobby was quiet, the smell of fresh flowers filled the air, and for a little while everything felt calm. She changed into her uniform, tied her apron, and checked her cleaning list for the day. As she walked through the long hallways with her cart, she kept thinking about what had happened yesterday in the penthouse. She didn't usually think much about guests. They came and went all the time. But the way that man had looked at her after hearing her speak Dutch had stayed in her mind. His eyes hadn't been rude or harsh, just surprised. It had been such a small thing, but it made her wonder what he had been thinking. When she reached the housekeeping office, her supervisor was already there talking on the phone. She looked up as Aisha entered. "Good morning," she said. "You'll be handling the top floor again today." The guest from yesterday extended his stay. Aisha nodded, trying to sound casual. "All right. I'll make sure everything's perfect." She pushed her cart toward the elevator, her heart beating a little faster. The top floor was quiet as usual, the carpet soft under her shoes. She took a deep breath before knocking lightly on the penthouse door. There was no answer, so she used her staff key to enter carefully. The suite was neat. He was clearly a tidy man, but she started dusting and straightening things anyway. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and freshly brewed coffee. While she worked, she noticed a newspaper spread open on the coffee table. The headline showed a large photo of Mr. Van Dalen shaking hands with another businessman. The words underneath said something about a billion-dollar deal. Aisha stared at it for a moment. She couldn't imagine what it must feel like to have that kind of power. To make decisions that changed entire companies. She was putting fresh towels in the bathroom when she suddenly heard a voice behind her. "Good morning again." She turned quickly. It was him. Mr. Van Dalen stood near the doorway holding a cup of coffee. His tone was polite but calm, the same as before. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "I hope I didn't disturb you." "Not at all," he said, setting his cup down. "You can continue. I just needed to grab a file." Aisha nodded and kept folding the towels, trying not to make eye contact for too long. But then, as he picked up some papers from the desk, he spoke again. "You're from Suriname, aren't you?" She paused, surprised that he remembered. "Yes, sir. I thought so," he said with a small smile. "Your accent is faint but still there. And your Dutch, it's very good. Where did you learn it?" Aisha hesitated, not sure how much to say. "In school, sir. I studied linguistics before I had to stop." He looked at her curiously. "Linguistics? That's impressive. So you studied languages?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. I've always loved them. Dutch, English, a little Spanish. Words can connect people in amazing ways." There was a short silence. He seemed thoughtful, not rushing to end the conversation like most guests did. Then he said, "And now you work here. Do you like it?" Aisha smiled politely. "It's honest work, sir. It helps me support my family. That's what matters." He nodded slowly as if he respected that answer. "Still," he said after a moment, "you seem overqualified for this." Aisha didn't know what to say. Compliments made her uncomfortable, especially from people like him. She just smiled again and said quietly, "Sometimes life takes a different turn, sir. We just do what we have to do." He studied her for a second longer, then picked up his briefcase. "I suppose that's true. Well, thank you for keeping this place so spotless. You do your job very well." "Thank you, sir," she replied, trying to hide her blush. When he left, the room felt strangely quiet. Aisha stood there for a moment, her hands still on the towel she was folding. No guest had ever spoken to her like that. Not just small talk, but real questions. It wasn't the words themselves, but the way he'd asked them, like he actually wanted to know who she was. The rest of the day passed quickly, but Aisha couldn't stop thinking about that short conversation. She kept wondering why a man like him would care about the background of a hotel maid. Maybe he was just being kind. Or maybe, she thought, he had noticed something others hadn't. That evening, when her shift ended, she walked home slowly through the city streets. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. She stopped at a small bridge over the canal and watched the reflection of the buildings ripple in the water. Her body was tired, but her mind was awake. She thought about the life she used to dream of, working with languages, traveling, maybe even translating books one day. Those dreams had faded when reality took over, but now for some reason they didn't seem so far away. Maybe it was just a random moment, a short talk with a guest, or maybe it was the start of something she couldn't see yet. When she got home, she called her brother and told him about her day, laughing as she described the fancy hotel suite and the rich man's neat habits. But she didn't tell him everything. Not about the way the man had looked at her when she spoke Dutch. Not about the strange hope that had quietly settled in her heart. Before sleeping, she whispered a small prayer, asking for strength and for something good to come her way. Then she turned off the light, not knowing that the next morning would bring a surprise she could never have imagined. The next morning, Aisha arrived at work with a quiet mix of nerves and curiosity. She told herself it was just another normal day, but deep down, something felt different. She couldn't stop thinking about the man in the penthouse, his calm voice, the way he had looked at her when she talked about her past. When she reached the housekeeping office, her supervisor called her name. "Aisha," she said, holding a note in her hand, "you're wanted at the manager's office." Aisha's heart skipped a beat. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quickly. The supervisor shook her head. "No idea, just go see him. But don't worry." Aisha tried to stay calm as she walked through the long hallway to the manager's office. She had never been called there before. Her hands felt slightly sweaty, and her heart beat faster with every step. When she entered, the manager, a tall man with kind eyes, looked up from his desk. Aisha, please come in." "Sit down." She sat carefully on the chair, her palms resting on her knees. "There's nothing to worry about," he said with a small smile. "I just wanted to tell you something unusual. The guest in the penthouse, Mr. Van Dalen, asked about you." Aisha blinked in surprise. "About me?" "Yes," the manager said. "He said he was impressed by your professionalism and by your Dutch." He gave a light chuckle. "That's not something we hear every day from our guests." Aisha didn't know what to say. She felt her cheeks warm up. "I didn't mean to speak out of turn," she said quickly. The phone just rang and the manager raised his hand gently. "Relax, you did nothing wrong." In fact, he seemed quite pleased. "He asked if he could speak with you personally, if you're comfortable with that." Aisha stared for a moment. "Speak with me, why?" "He didn't say," the manager replied. But from his tone it sounded positive. "He'll be in the lounge this afternoon. You can meet him there." Aisha nodded slowly, still unsure what to think. After she left the office, her coworkers crowded around her, curious. What did the manager say? "Are you in trouble?" one asked. Aisha shook her head, half smiling. "No, not trouble, just something strange. The guest from the penthouse wants to see me." They all looked at her with wide eyes. "The rich businessman?" Another whispered. "Why?" "I don't know," Aisha said honestly. "Maybe he wants to complain." They all laughed nervously, but Aisha's mind was spinning. All morning she tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting. Why would a man like him want to see her again? Maybe he needed help with something, maybe translation, maybe something else. Whatever it was, she just hoped it wouldn't get her in trouble. By afternoon, her shift was almost over when the manager called her again. "He's waiting in the lounge," he said. Aisha washed her hands, fixed her hair, and made sure her uniform looked neat. Her heart was thumping hard as she walked to the elegant lounge, where soft music played and sunlight poured through the tall windows. She spotted him right away, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea reading some papers. When he saw her, he stood up politely. "Ah, Miss Aisha," he said with a small smile. "Please have a seat." She sat down carefully, still unsure why she was there. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable," he said kindly. "I just wanted to thank you for your help the other day. You handled that call with such ease. It surprised me in a good way." "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. "I was just doing my job," he smiled. "Yes, but not everyone does it with such confidence. You said you studied linguistics, correct?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. But I had to stop when life got difficult." He looked thoughtful for a moment. "That's unfortunate. You have a rare talent. Good language skills, clear speech, and professionalism. Qualities many people overlook." Aisha felt a strange warmth in her chest. No one had ever said something like that to her before. "I run several international companies," he continued. "We work with people from many countries. The Netherlands, Suriname, South Africa, Indonesia. Communication is key for us. And people like you, who understand both cultures and languages, are valuable." Aisha blinked. She didn't fully understand what he was suggesting. "I'm not sure I follow, sir." He smiled gently. "What I'm saying is, if you're ever interested in something beyond housekeeping, I'd like to recommend you for a position at my company. Perhaps as a translator or assistant. Of course, only if you'd want that." Aisha stared at him, speechless. For a few seconds, she couldn't even breathe. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "That's too kind. Think about it," he said softly. "You have potential. Don't let your current situation define what you're capable of." When the meeting ended, Aisha walked out of the lounge in a daze. The hotel lights seemed brighter, the air felt lighter. She couldn't believe what had just happened. A billionaire, someone from a world so far from hers, and had seen something in her that nobody else had noticed. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she realized something had changed inside her. For the first time in years, she felt hope. Real hope, that her life could be more than cleaning rooms and wiping mirrors. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she knew one thing. Her story was only just beginning. Aisha woke up early the next morning, but this time her heart felt different. There was something new inside her. A quiet mix of excitement and fear. The words from yesterday still echoed in her mind. "You have potential. Don't let your situation define what you're capable of." She kept repeating them while getting ready for work. It didn't feel real. A powerful businessman offering her a chance to work for his company. It sounded like something that only happened in movies. At the hotel, she tried to act normal, but her coworkers noticed the glow on her face. "Why are you smiling so much?" one of them teased. Aisha laughed softly. "No reason. Just a good day." But deep down she was thinking about everything he had said. Could she really do it? Could a maid become a translator or assistant at such a big company? The thought scared her, but it also filled her with hope. Around noon, the hotel manager called her again. "Mr. Van Dylen left this for you," he said, handing her a sealed envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a neatly folded letter on expensive paper. It was written in both English and Dutch. "Dear Miss Aisha, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I meant what I said. People with your skill and attitude are rare. I've spoken with my HR department, and they would be glad to interview you for an assistant position at my office next week. If you're interested, please contact the number below." Victor Van Dylen. Aisha read the letter twice, her eyes wide with disbelief. The manager smiled when he saw her expression. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "You've impressed someone very important." She tried to speak but couldn't find the words. All she could do was nod and whisper, "Thank you." That evening, she sat by her small kitchen table staring at the letter again and again. Her brother called and she finally told him everything. At first, he didn't believe her. "A company job. For you, that's amazing," he said, his voice full of joy. "You have to try, Aisha. This could change everything." His words gave her courage. The next day, she called the number on the letter and confirmed her interview. The woman on the phone was polite and professional. "We look forward to meeting you next Tuesday at 10 a.m., she said. From that moment, Aisha's days were filled with nervous energy. She still worked her normal shifts, but in her free time she practiced Dutch phrases, read online articles about business communication, and even borrowed a second-hand blazer from a friend. She wanted to look professional, even if she didn't have much. When the interview day finally arrived, she woke up before sunrise. She ironed her clothes carefully, tied her hair neatly, and wore a simple silver necklace her mother had given her years ago. As she looked in the mirror, she whispered to herself, "You can do this." The company building was tall and modern, made of shining glass that reflected the morning light. As she walked through the doors, she felt small but determined. The receptionist greeted her kindly and guided her to the waiting area. A few minutes later, a woman in a gray suit appeared. "Miss Aisha?" "Yes," she replied, standing quickly. "Please come with me," the woman said with a smile. The interview room was bright and spacious. Two people sat across the table, asking her about her background, her studies, and her work at the hotel. Aisha answered honestly, speaking with confidence but also humility. She told them about her love for languages, how she enjoyed helping people communicate better, and how much she valued hard work. They seemed impressed. "You speak Dutch and English fluently," one of them said. "That's exactly what we need for this role." When the interview ended, Aisha thanked them and left the building. As she walked down the street, the cold air brushed against her face, but she didn't feel it. She was smiling the whole way home. 3 days later, while she was cleaning a suite at the hotel, her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Aisha," she said nervously. "Good afternoon," a woman replied cheerfully. "I'm calling from Mr. Van Dalen's company. Congratulations, you've been selected for the assistant position." For a moment, Aisha couldn't speak. Tears filled her eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked softly, her voice shaking. "Yes, absolutely. You'll start next Monday." After hanging up, Aisha sat on the edge of the bed she had just made, her hands covering her face. She laughed and cried at the same time. Her dream, something she thought she had lost years ago, was finally coming true. That evening, as she walked home through the quiet streets, the city lights sparkled like stars. She looked up at the sky and whispered a thank you. For the first time in a long time, her heart felt light, full of hope and purpose. She knew her journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first day at her new job felt like stepping into a new world. Aisha stood in front of the tall glass building, holding her small handbag tightly. The same building she had walked into for her interview now looked even bigger, almost intimidating. But she took a deep breath and reminded herself of everything she had gone through to get here. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and new paper. People moved quickly through the halls, dressed in suits, talking on phones, carrying files. Everyone seemed busy, focused. For a moment, Aisha wondered if she truly belonged here. She was used to cleaning rooms quietly, not sitting behind desks or attending meetings. But when she reached the reception, the woman smiled warmly. "Welcome, Miss Aisha, we've been expecting you." Those words gave her courage. She followed the woman upstairs to her new office, a bright room with large windows overlooking the city. There was a neat desk, a computer, and a nameplate with her name on it. It felt unreal. Soon, another woman entered, her supervisor, who would guide her through the job. She was kind and patient, explaining everything clearly. Aisha listened carefully, taking notes, determined to learn everything she could. Her duties included helping with translations, organizing schedules, and assisting with meetings where Dutch and English speakers needed help communicating. By afternoon, she had already helped translate a few short documents. The words came naturally to her, like they had been waiting inside her all this time. When she finished, her supervisor smiled. "You're doing great. You're quick and accurate." Hearing that filled Aisha's heart with pride. For the first time in years, she felt seen for her mind, not just her work. A few days later, she was asked to attend a small meeting. To her surprise, Mr. Van Dalen was there too. He greeted her kindly. "So how's your first week going?" he asked. She smiled nervously. "It's going well, sir. I'm still learning, but everyone's been very helpful." "I had no doubt you'd do well," he said. "You've earned this." Those words stayed with her long after the meeting ended. It wasn't just a compliment. It was a reminder that someone had believed in her when she didn't even believe in herself. Weeks passed, and Aisha settled into her new routine. Each day brought new challenges: phone calls with clients, reports to translate, meetings to organize. It wasn't easy, but she loved every bit of it. She learned to manage her time, to speak confidently, and to handle people from all walks of life. At the end of every week, she would walk by the Rosenberg Grand Hotel on her way home. Sometimes she stopped by to greet her old co-workers. They always welcomed her with smiles and hugs. "Look at you now," one of them said proudly. From cleaning rooms to working in an office. Aisha laughed, feeling both humble and grateful. I just got lucky, she said softly. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't luck. It was years of hard work, patience, and a single moment of courage, answering a phone call in Dutch. Months went by, and her life slowly transformed. She moved into a small but cozy apartment closer to her office. She sent more money home to help her brother finish school. On weekends, she sometimes took a walk through the park or sat by the canal, reading books in both Dutch and English. Her days were no longer filled with exhaustion and worry, but with purpose and peace. She often thought about how everything had changed from one small choice, something so ordinary that had turned into something life-changing. One afternoon, as she was leaving work, Mr. Van Dalen stopped by her desk. "We're organizing a small event for the company's new hires," he said. "Would you be willing to share your story? I think it would inspire others." Aisha hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "If it can help someone, I'd be happy to." A week later, she stood in front of a small crowd at the company event. Her voice trembled a little at first, but as she spoke, she saw people listening closely. She told them about her journey, how she came from another country, worked as a maid, and one day answered a phone without realizing her life would change forever. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. After the event, many people came to thank her. One young intern said, "Your story gave me hope. Sometimes I feel like I'll never reach my dream, but now I think maybe I can." That night, as Aisha walked home under the streetlights, she smiled softly. She had once been invisible, blending into the background, but now her story was helping others see their own worth. She looked up at the stars and whispered to herself, "It's true. Sometimes opportunity doesn't knock loudly. Sometimes it calls softly, and you just have to be brave enough to answer." And from that day on, she promised herself never to doubt her voice again.